liver, beef, kidney, heart, spleen, goat, egg. These are some of our more nutrient dense, highly bioavailable foods. And for people to tell us that we shouldn't be consuming them and that we can get everything we need from plants. Now, I do think genetically, some people are going to be better able to extract nutrients from plants. Genetics has a lot to do with it, whether you can convert your animal-based omega-3s, for example, or your plant-based into the EPA and DHA, which are forms that we actually benefit a lot from. That will be genetically based, right? And also based on the state of your health, like how many nutrients do you already have? Like how able are you to make these conversions? But so some people can probably do it better. I know some of those people, right? They can live without animal products, and I've seen them, and they seem to be doing better than others. But I think for the majority of us, we are going to really benefit from high quality animal products because of the nutrients they contain, because of how bioavailable they are. And this is especially true when you're pregnant. It's especially true when you're growing, which is why I'm so incredibly passionate about this topic, because I think some of the kids out there, even in my son's class, and he's very young, are already buying into this narrative that animal products equals bad.
Autumn Smith, I'm so happy to have you on this podcast. I'm just so excited. And we've just had a lovely chat just now, just kind of getting to know where we live and, what we're up to these days. And it's just really such a pleasure to have you on this podcast. And I can't wait to dig into the questions that I have for you, because I'm so interested in what you're doing and just your companies and your ethics and your moral values. Like, I just find them all so fascinating, and I just think there's so much to learn from it. So I can't wait to dig into this conversation. How are you doing today?
No, I'm doing so well, and I'm really, really honored to be here. Since you reached out, I've become a fan of all that you're doing too, and you're just such a warm energy. So I'm really excited, and thank you for letting me be here.
Oh, brilliant. So just so that the audience know, I mean, usually I do a little clip before the podcast, just introducing the guest, but this is a nice way to get the conversation started. So you are the co-founder of some amazing companies. So you're the co-founder of Paleo Valley, which is what got me to contact you in the first place, which I'll go into soon. So Paleo Valley, then you run Wild Pastures, which is the company that I really want to dig into in this podcast. And you just told me that you have a restaurant as well, and you might even have another one. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Wild Pastures Burger Company is the restaurant. And just so that everybody understands, there's a lot of people running these companies now.
Yeah.
So I am a
Yes.
co-founder, but there is just a gigantic
Yes.
team of us now that is, and I just always want to give them a shout out, because as you might imagine, dealing with frozen meat, especially in Wild Pastures and
Yeah.
live animals, and it's a tricky business, but we're glad to be in it.
I mean, there's only so much you can do as one person or two people, you have to have a big team, right? To keep
Yes.
everything
Yeah.
going.
And something that's relevant that you might not know too is I'm finishing my dissertation, and we're studying the way that the nutrient profiles of beef change based on how they're raised. It's the Beef Nutrient Density Project I got to work on. So we can talk about that too, which is kind of
Yes,
exciting.
please. That is right in line with my questioning. This is so exciting.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to tell everyone the story of how I came to contact you. So I know about you, and I've known about you for a long time. I listen to your podcast. I'm a podcast fan. I've forgotten the name of your podcast. Something Paleo, like
Optimized Paleo.
that's it.
Yeah.
Optimized Paleo.
Yeah.
So I listened to that. And I've just obviously heard about you because I'm a nutritional therapist, I'm studying functional medicine, and I'm just interested in all of that. So that's how I came across you. So I've known about you for many years. But I've always been intrigued about your Paleo Valley meat sticks and snack bars, superfood bars and supplements. And I'd never tried them because I'm from the UK, and we don't really get it over there, and I live in Cayman now, so we don't really get it over here. But the other day I came across it in a little cafe here, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, I've got to buy it. So then I bought I bought I think it was a beef stick and a lemon meringue superfood bar, and they were absolutely delicious. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to reach out to Autumn. This is a sign. Like,
I love that. I love that you found it down there.
I love
What's
that I
the
found
place
it.
called? That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
It's just a lovely little cafe, and everyone goes there. So I'm sure that everyone in Cayman now knows about Paleo Valley because it's a very popular cafe. And oh, it was so lovely to actually find your products. And I tried it, and I was like, yes, I see what all of the chat is about now. I see what you're speaking of now, and it was just, yeah, it was just so nice to find it. So basically, I know that you have a limited time because you've got to collect the kids, but it's gonna collect it is his son you have.
Just my one. Yeah,
Yes,
Maverick.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But I just wanted to, okay, so just to know what your story is, like how you got started in this industry, because I know you have an interesting health story, and therefore what got you started with Paleo Valley and kind of what led you on your journey.
Yeah, I love that. So, yeah, I basically was a child with a lot of digestive issues that no doctor knew how to treat. I had IBS, they called it, because I would just all of a sudden be super bloated or have what felt like a rock in my stomach. I remember having my mom take me to the emergency room. They were like, "Oh, you have irritable bowel syndrome. You should take some Beano." And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." But that didn't really do anything, didn't really change anything. And as I got into my teens, my digestive issues started to manifest in other ways, right? Because there's an imbalance that isn't being addressed. And it kind of went the mental health route, depression, anxiety. And I was both physically and mentally, emotionally very uncomfortable most of the time. And so I turned to substances. So it just kind of snowballed. And I got kicked out of my parents' house before I even graduated high school. Luckily, I've always been a lover of learning and I'm always really passionate about dance. So even though I lived on my own, I still finished school, still went to college, still eventually went to Los Angeles to dance. And I became a celebrity fitness trainer with Tracy Anderson. It was a job I'm forever grateful for. But the problem was I was doing all this exercise and kind of like trying to live the fit lifestyle, but behind closed doors I was really suffering. I was still having a lot of digestive issues. My skin was breaking out. I was feeling horrible at the end of the day, anxiety, depressed. And so my husband, when he got to know me, when we were dating seriously and thinking about marriage, and especially after we got married, was like, we have to do something, right? You're really suffering in silence. I don't want this life for you. And so we went to doctors and they had told me the same thing they always had. But when he got on Google, my husband is a problem solver. And so he was like, we are going to try some things that are outside the box. And we tried dietary therapy back in 2007. I remember it. I thought it was so silly that, oh my gosh, what I was eating was going to make a difference. And in 30 days, it really did. My digestive issues went away. And then over the course of the next year, as I addressed other things, my mental health started to become so powerfully different that I called Tracy Anderson and told her that I had to change directions. I had to figure out what helped me go from just being fit to being well. And so I went back to school, got my master's initially. That led me to Paleo Valley because my last assignment for Tracy Anderson was a world tour for 7 months. And I had just found the power of diet. And then I was unable to kind of support my new lifestyle on the road because we were in a different country every day. Some days. And so I wanted to come back and create products that people who were busy could take with them. And so that's why we got into the beef sticks. And it wasn't until our son was born, and we had already established all these relationships with farmers and ranchers who were teaching us about the nuance of agriculture and the fact that our topsoil was being depleted at an alarming rate, much faster than it's actually being built. And that's when we became passionate about regenerative agriculture, because we realized the way we're going about agriculture might leave our children with a planet that they will not be grateful for. And I didn't want to see a day like that. And so we founded Wild Pastures like that. And Wild Pastures is a meat delivery service where we only support American regenerative farmers exclusively. And then the burger company was an offshoot of that because we moved to Boulder and we're like, where are all the great burgers and where's the regenerative agriculture in kind of the heart of, ranching? I mean, we're in Colorado. And so we decided to create a burger restaurant without sugar and seed oils. And so we opened our first one in Boulder and hopefully opening our second one soon. So that's
Wow.
how I got here.
Love it. And I love how you move somewhere and you just say, where are all the good burgers? Do you know what? Let's just make it ourselves. And you just create a company out of nothing and you just solve your own problem. I love it.
Well, here's where it started too, is we're always long. Like we never want to waste. We are we waste 40% of the food that we produce here in America, and we don't want to be part of that problem. And so we're always long in ground beef. And so we thought, oh, a burger restaurant is the perfect complement to our regenerative meat delivery service. And luckily, we found a partner who was very, very passionate about environmental science and nutrition, and so he funds a lot of what we envision. So it's a partnership. But yeah, we're pretty lucky and pretty driven to, you know, provide as many options as we can and to never waste anything.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And it kind of goes back to, let's say, the Paleo Valley products that you have. What I do love about them is that when I look at the ingredients, I feel like it's not just a regular beef stick or turkey stick or superfood bar. Like it's not just a regular one. It's one where I feel like every ingredient, there's a reason, and you've tried your absolute best with every single ingredient on there. And there's that feeling around the products that you have. Do you have, just out of curiosity, do you have a favorite product out of your Paleo Valley line?
Oh, it changes,
Yeah.
right? Oh my goodness. I can only actually eat one of our beef sticks because
Mhm.
garlic isn't my friend. So the summer sausage beef sticks are some of my favorite. But our Essential C product is one of my absolute favorites. It's just a whole food vitamin C, and most vitamin C on the market isn't from lemons and limes. It's from GMO corn. And you know, I do think there can be a time and place for both. But for me, there are so many magnificent compounds, hundreds of compounds in food, whereas one isolated synthetic compound, I just don't think it compares when you can make the choice. And so Essential C, it has 450 milligrams, you know, way more than we're told that we need per day of vitamin C. But the truth is, we all probably need more than we're being told we do. And especially if we're sick or ill, exercising a lot, you know, aging, that there's just reasons why we might need more vitamin C, especially for immunocompromised as well. And we want to actually optimize our health rather than just kind of get by. But
Yeah.
geez, and also one more I'll mention is
Mm.
neuro effect. I'm really into medicinal mushrooms, and I unfortunately have both genes for Alzheimer's. I'm ApoE44. And so figuring out a way to improve my brain health regularly is very important to me. And lion's mane mushroom, for anyone out there listening wanting to optimize brain health, it creates nerve growth factor and BDNF. These are like our brain's fertilizer, and they can help stimulate neurogenesis and protect the neurons that we have. And in lion's mane specifically, has been shown to reverse mild cognitive decline in Japanese men, which was pretty exciting, and a really hard thing to do if you look at the litany of Alzheimer's drugs that have kind of come and gone because they're not as effective as we'd like them to be. But lion's mane and other medicinal mushrooms have incredible benefits, and so neuro effect is something I'm taking all the time too.
And I'll second that with the lion's mane, because I remember when I looked into lion's mane for a client a long time ago, and the research is incredible. Like there's so many papers actually stating how good it is for brain health. And by the
Yeah.
time I was done with my research, I was like, why aren't I taking this myself? So then I went on to buy this huge bottle, and now I just take it regularly for brain health, because I think that's most, for me, that's what I want to focus on the most. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And the thing, it was funny because we almost put our product to market, and then we got contacted by this guy who manufactures mushrooms, and he was teaching me that most mushrooms actually come from the mycelium. Do you know about this?
Yes, yeah.
This is the
But
fruiting
tell the story
body.
though. Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's really interesting because most mushrooms are grown on a substrate, right? A grain substrate like oats or something like that. And then they're grown until the mycelium, which is basically the root structure, but isn't the fruiting body, which is kind of the final stage of the mushroom, and the part of the mushroom that most of the research has been done on historically. But the other interesting aspect is that it's grown on this mycelium, but it can't be separated from the grain. And so there's been analyses to show that that grain actually makes up a significant portion of the product, sometimes up to 40%, maybe like half of the product. So you're buying this mushroom product, but it's heavily watered down at times with grain. And so he creates these full spectrum not mycelial based, I'm sorry, fruiting body only mushroom supplements. And so that's what we've used. So it's not just kind of a really high quality organic lion's mane. It's actually it's standardized, and it's about as high quality as you can possibly get.
See, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying with your products. Everything, like you go into all the details about them. But I haven't managed to get hold of all of your products, but it's the one that I'm most interested in is the freeze dried organ beef organ supplements that you sell,
Oh,
because oh my god, because how many women, which woman doesn't have some form of anemia, especially if she's had kids? Like it's an epidemic, but we don't know, and the blood tests don't tell us the full
yeah.
story. So for me, like I'll just tell you a quick personal story. I have all of the symptoms of anemia, like all of them, just on a very small level.
Mm.
Like my hair is getting really thin, and I do have cold hands, and I get dizzy, and like all of the symptoms. But I keep on going back to the doctor, and they always come back with your iron levels are normal. So they don't really want to prescribe me iron tablets. And I'm like, well, iron tablets probably won't do the trick anyway. And I probably need to do a whole gut rehaul anyway. But basically, I'm trying to integrate more liver into my diet, more organ meats. But it's hard. Like it's hard because they're so hard to eat. Like even once a week is getting a bit much for me. Like, so
Oh,
your tablets, like I need to get hold of them ASAP.
yeah, let me find you. Wait, I would love to give them to you. I can't even tell you how many stories and testimonials we get from
I
people,
read the
women,
reviews. Yeah,
yeah, and that have just
incredible.
two most recently that they've been able to get off of iron infusions. Obviously, listen to your doctor. You
Yeah.
can't just, decide to stop. But it's really interesting history because liver obviously contains iron, but it's not an incredibly high amount of absolute iron. I mean, it's high in iron, but for its ability to be able to help women and other people overcome iron, it's because of the copper, it's because of the vitamin A, it's because of the symphony of nutrients that it contains. And back in 1934, the Nobel Prize of Physiology and Medicine went to three doctors who were able to cure pernicious anemia with liver. And they first noticed the effect in dogs, but later found that it was actually able to do the same thing in humans. And so it is a scientifically validated fact that liver can be helpful for anemia and iron-based issues. And it's something I hear about all the time. And honestly, I have never had iron issues since I started taking it. And like you said, I used to try to eat liver, and I would notice a vitality in me when I
Mhm.
could actually get it down
Yes,
that I
yes.
really enjoyed. It was like it made me
Yeah,
want to
you feel really
dance.
sharp and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and there's actually another anti-fatigue factor that they saw in a rat study. They decided to give rats either B vitamins or liver, and the ones that had liver swam like 4 or 5 times faster than the ones that got the B vitamins. And some of them were still swimming at the end of the experiment. They just decided they had to end it. And that was in 1953. That was like a Benjamin
Okay.
Ershoff study. So yeah, and honestly, there's not a lot of research around the benefits of liver, but when you look at its impressive nutrient profile and research by Dr. Ty Beal, did you see the food compass?
No,
That
no, no, no. Tell
Okay, so
me.
the food compass was this, it was like a conceptually impressive effort. What they were looking at is trying to show you the foods that would be best for you to eat. But we had cereal like Lucky Charms and chocolate covered almonds, and even I think like an ice cream with nuts higher than beef, eggs. People have made, and the authors would argue that you weren't supposed to compare cross categories, but the results did. They still got a numerical score up to 100, and beef and eggs were very low, right? These really nutrient dense foods. But then this really cool researcher named Dr. Ty Beal came along and said, we need to really focus on which nutrients are we deficient in, most of us, and then which food provide those nutrients. And when you use that algorithm, you come up with liver, heart, kidney, spleen, like all of the top foods are organ meats, foods that none of us are consuming. And so,
Right.
yes, B12, the highest levels of B12, the highest levels of vitamin A in any food. We have iron, we have copper, we have CoQ10 in heart, right? Selenium in kidney. It's just, yeah, the wealth of nutrients in these very high concentrations. And most importantly, in a bioavailable form because they're in a concert of other nutrients that just aid their absorption. It's really exciting. I'm very
It
passionate
is.
about
It
and I
is.
forgot about it because it's one of our first products. But
Oh
yes, if
God.
you're not consuming organ meats, hopefully from a very healthy animal, but and if you don't like the taste, then absolutely get on the liver pills. It's heart, liver, and kidney from Regenerative Farms, and we just gently freeze dry it, and put them into pills. And you'll see in the reviews too that there's not like liver burps.
Yeah.
That it is,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't get any weird after effects either.
Yeah. Two things off the back of that. First of all, the quote that just comes to mind is one of my favorite quotes. So Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she said that, she says, okay, let me get this right. Liver is an absolute resuscitation for people suffering with anemia. And I just love that. It's so clean, it's so concise, it's just so straight to the point. Like it's just a resuscitation for anemia. And I'm just like, wow, like that, it was that kind of urged me to kind of really get involved in eating the organ meats. But also Dr. Bill Schindler, I had a podcast episode with him not too long ago, and he mentioned how our ancestors, and even people who are living like our ancestors currently, when they kill an animal, they eat the organ meats first, like because they know instinctively that that's the most important part of the animal. But we're so consumed with eating the muscle meat. Like muscle meat is still great, it's still great for our health, but it doesn't have the same range of nutrients as the organ meats. But our ancestors knew that, and people still know that, but we don't. Like we just buy the muscle and that's it, and kind of stop there.
Yeah, and they also knew like cured like, right? This is like a less scientifically validated
Mm.
principle, but back in our ancestors' time, if you had eye problems, you ate eyeballs, right?
Mm.
If you had, liver problems, you would look for the liver. And you're right, it's instinctually what animals in the wild do and humans do. And then I think we kind of heard about cholesterol, and then we all got scared, and we could go down that rabbit hole. But I'm doing a whole docu-series unpacking all of that we'll talk about. But what I did want to mention too is methionine restriction, right? Methionine is an amino acid found in muscle meats that a lot of longevity researchers will tell you and have evidence for. It can extend life if you avoid methionine. But the cool thing is glycine, an amino acid found in organ meats and collagen and the other parts that we're not consuming. When you consume glycine with methionine, it seems you're able to kind of mitigate the effects of too much muscle meat and potentially extend lifespan because you're adding back in that missing piece. And this could potentially protect your health. So I think, yes, we've been too focused on muscle meats, but adding it back in is not only good, in terms of its nutrients, but maybe the glycine as well, which is a nutrient, of course. But there's just like many reasons to eat them all together, to eat the whole
Yes.
animal. And that's what we're trying to make readily accessible to people who are a little bit squeamish about doing that. So,
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I love that. It's a very exciting topic. I could continue with that conversation, but I really want to get on to the Wild Pastures side of things. So, okay, so your products, your Paleo Valley products, they have meat protein, like animal protein laced throughout. So not only do you have like organ meats freeze dried, but you also have the meat sticks, obviously, but then you have the superfood bars, which have like superfoods, like I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head, but not animal proteins, like they're just kind of, plant
Yeah,
foods.
spinach, kale, all of those blueberries, acerola
Right.
chips. Yeah.
Right. But then you have the bone broth protein added. So you kind of lace it throughout all of your products.
Yeah.
So that kind of that I absolutely love. So why do we need animal protein, and why can't we get the same from a plant-based diet?
Oh, I love this question. Yeah, and this is what the docu-series is about, because when we had Wild Pastures, people who would unsubscribe, we always ask why. And they say, well, we're cutting back on meat so that we can save the planet and our health. But Dr. Bill Schindler, he's in the docu-series. So as you learn this message, this narrative that we hear today, that plant-based is best for health, it's not correct, right? Yes, can we all benefit from eating more plants? Most of us anyway, with better gut function. Yeah, I think that's true. But that to mean that animal products are the cause of our ill health, that doesn't make any sense at all. We've been eating animal products for over 2 million years. Dr. Bill Schindler will tell you himself, he believes it's the reason that we had this massive expansion in our brain health, right? And even when you look at other populations who consume animal products, but not in the context of the standard American diet, they don't have the same health outcomes. So I think it's really, really unfortunate that we are blaming the wrong villain, right? We're
Mm.
blaming what processed foods have done to our health, to our collective health, on animal products. And yeah, there are things that we should change about the way we're raising animals. We can talk about those later. But the truth is, animal products contain very highly bioavailable protein, first of all, just in the amino acids, right? It's not just what amino acids are in a food, right? It's how accessible are they to your body. Now, meat is highly bioavailable when compared to plant proteins, right? Then you have the amino acids they contain. They're different, right? Meat has higher levels of branched chain amino acids, leucine, that help promote muscle synthesis, right? And some plant products can contain that too, but often certain amino acids are in very low amounts, and that can interfere if you don't have the amino acids and the right amount of the amino acids. It can still interfere with protein synthesis. And then we just have other nutrients that are just not even available in plants,
Mhm.
right? Vitamin B12 is a really great example. There are case studies, unfortunately, in babies who are born or fed by vegan mothers who are B12 deficient and, don't even recover. Even when you give them B12, they don't fully recover. There are brain anomalies and sometimes even death. So that's and again, iron from animal sources is going to be a different form, heme iron, than you're going to get in plants. And again, that is more bioavailable. And then we have zinc. Zinc is far more bioavailable in animal sources. And these are some of our major nutrient deficiencies worldwide. And again, that's why Dr. Ty Beal's research highlighted that beautifully. Liver, beef, kidney, heart, spleen, goat, egg. These are some of our more nutrient dense, highly bioavailable foods. And for people to tell us that we shouldn't be consuming them and that we can get everything we need from plants. Now, I do think genetically, some people are going to be better able to extract nutrients from plants. Genetics has a lot to do with it, whether you can convert your animal-based omega-3s, for example, or your plant-based into the EPA and DHA, which are forms that we actually benefit a lot from. That will be genetically based, right? And also based on the state of your health, like how many nutrients do you already have? Like how able are you to make these conversions? But so some people can probably do it better. I know some of those people, right? They can live without animal products, and I've seen them, and they seem to be doing better than others. But I think for the majority of us, we are going to really benefit from high quality animal products because of the nutrients they contain, because of how bioavailable they are. And this is especially true when you're pregnant. This is especially true when you're growing, which is why I'm so incredibly passionate about this topic, because I think some of the kids out there, even in my son's class, and he's very young, are already buying into this narrative that animal products equals bad. Like animal products equals you're being bad to the environment, you're being
Like they're
bad to
being
your body.
taught in
And really,
schools and things, like it's kind of make its way into the curriculum and
yes, and
yeah.
yes, schools are following it. He had a vegetarian teacher last year, and then there was a friend whose daughter came home and said she couldn't be in a club because she was eating meat. She was a meat eater. Yeah, and she was only 10. And so yeah, it's just permeating this younger generation. And I think that's really scary because protein, they've even done studies on it, where an egg a day is going to improve cognitive function, and just in growth, right? Stunting is huge when you don't get enough protein. So our kids and their B12, there's critical windows of development when you don't get these nutrients at the proper time, right? We might not ever recover. And the other thing I think is really important is when we're aging, right? Because there's this anabolic resistance piece where we become less able to utilize the proteins that we're consuming. And so we do actually benefit from a little more protein
Yes.
as we age as well, especially because you need to maintain strength, right? And strength, we need protein and, of course, exercise to build muscle mass, but
Hmm.
protein can be a really important part of that. And if you're not consuming as enough as you age, and I'm watching this with people I love very much, you become more frail,
Yeah.
you become more prone to
Same.
falls, and your health just kind of deteriorates. So yeah, that is my tirade about,
Mm.
yes, I think animal products are a very, very important part of our diet. They have been evolutionarily. They have nutrients that we just can't get anywhere else in a highly bioavailable form. And because of their really bioavailable protein and the fact that protein can literally shut off an appetite. There's a protein leverage hypothesis, meaning if
Yes.
your body's looking for amino acids, if you
Yes.
get those amino acids, you don't need to eat as much. I think a lot
Yeah.
of Americans could really benefit from that message
Yeah.
rather than the fear mongering about animal proteins. So yes, eat your animal proteins, high quality versions, eat your plants, right? Just eat them both. And I
Yeah.
think, and avoid processed foods. And I think we could move on and have so much better health than if we
Yeah.
just fear animal products alone. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I just want to say that anybody who is vegan or vegetarian, like the way I am in life as a person is I never judge, and I'm always kind of like, you do you, like, and I'll only give my opinion or my advice if someone asks for it. So that's first of all what I want to say before I say what I have to say next. Basically, do you watch Alone? the
No.
show. Oh,
Is
okay.
it good?
So that's very good. So there's like 15 seasons or something like ridiculous like that. But basically, the plot is that about 10 people, they go to like a isolated island somewhere like Vancouver Island and then some other places around the world, and they're alone. So they split up. They're miles apart from each other and they're living alone, and they basically live off the land. And whoever no mobile phones or anything. And whoever stays out there alone the longest is the winner, and they win about $500,000. So it's so interesting. You should watch it. I think they've got a series
I'm
on
going to.
Netflix at the moment. Yeah. But basically, I was saying to my husband the other day, you know, if you look at the way they're trying to survive on the island, like it's just animals, 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 like fish, or like that's all they care about and that's all they're looking for. And the plants, okay, fair enough. There aren't a lot of plants growing because they're usually in winter, but they're just literally all about the animal protein. And I feel like that's a really good indication of what humans are, what we're built to do, what we're seeking. If you're not eating enough food, then needing that animal protein is like a really kind of primal kind of urge. So that kind of goes in, that kind of supports what you're saying really about what we need. Like,
Yeah, and it's hard, right? And I want to say that too. I never judge anyone. What you eat is absolutely your business,
yeah, yeah.
100%. And I think growing up in Montana, the reason I can see why people would want to become a vegetarian or a vegan, right? Because you don't want to see animal suffering. I think growing up in Montana was part of the reason that I didn't go down that route, because I did see that. That was part of, I grew up around ranches. I grew up around farms. We just I had an understanding of that was kind of part of the cycle of life, and that we are part of that cycle of life. But I think as more of us become more removed from where our food's coming from, and we start to forget that everything is eaten, and we eat and everything will be eaten, and we're going to go back and be part of that cycle too. But it's very hard to deal with. But I do think it's important to understand that we are animals too. And some of us might be able to be okay without animal products, but I think for most of us, they can be very, very powerful tools for health.
Yeah. And what you've just said kind of leads me on perfectly to the next question. So I want to say that I kind of, in a way, I understand why people turn to vegetarianism or veganism, because when you go into the supermarket and you see the meat like just on the shelf, and first of all, I feel this in myself. I go to the supermarket and I'm just like, this quality is so bad. Like, and I feel detached from the animal. I feel when I think of what those animals probably went through, with traditional farming methods, like it kind of, I don't know about you, but since I've had children, I'm a lot more sensitive to it. I don't know why, but like animals in general, I'm just a lot more sensitive to them. So I understand. So sometimes I just don't buy it. Like I walk into the supermarket and what I would have bought if I went into a farm shop, I barely buy anything. I just buy maybe a couple of things and then leave. And then I'm left with not much animal protein for the week. So I understand why someone who's like, no, I don't want to go there because of the way they're treated or the quality of the food. Like I kind of get that.
Yeah.
So basically what I wanted to ask you is what are the issues that we face with supermarket meats, and and then going into Wild Pastures and the way that you find meat,
Yeah.
like how do they compare with each other?
Okay. They're so different. And so, like you're saying, yes, I feel that too. Much more sensitive to animals. My son loves animals. I think we're going to have a million pets. And we went to a ranch the other day, and it just brings us such peace and joy to just experience and be with the animals. And so, yeah, I became really passionate about this because as I started digging in and learning how most of the animals are treated in America, when you walk into a grocery store, upward at least 70% of the beef you're buying comes from factory farms. 100% of the chickens, the eggs, and the other products, pork, they're coming from factory farms, right? So animals are cramped in these tiny spaces, sometimes in cages, right? As pigs, farrowing crates or otherwise, and battery cages for chickens, egg layings. And and they sometimes tail dockings, right? And they're being taken from their young ones, or weaned way too early. And I just found out, hundreds of millions of chicks, like male chicks, are just killed,
I
right? They're
deal with
just
that.
killed because,
Yeah.
yeah, they're just not really useful in, so yeah, it is really, really, really sad. And it's not only sad, right, for how the animals are treated, and also they're not able to self-select foods that could potentially make them feel good. They're given a lot of times just the same food, and that can make them sick. But also environmental destruction, right? Air pollution, water pollution. We have dead zones everywhere. We have higher rates of asthma in areas where there are more CAFOs. We have novel viruses, H5N1, avian flu, coming out of these antibiotic resistance. Maybe one day we're not going to be able to use our life-saving antibiotics, because when you put them in these animals in such close quarters, eventually these microbes, they start to evolve, right? And then
Mm.
they're resistant to antibiotics. And so we could see a future where we can't use those anymore, because 80% of the antibiotics used worldwide are used in animal agriculture. And they did try to regulate that in 2016, but some people still do it. They said you can't do it for weight gain. It's why they're primarily used, but you can still do it, they'll say, in the name of preventing illness. And then, of course, we have the social impact, right? We had these beautiful, diversified, small family farms that just scattered the landscape in America. And now it's becoming very centralized. And a handful of corporations are really in charge of the meat, and a lot of them aren't even in America. Some of them are in China, for example, if we look at Smithfield. And it's a very precarious position we find ourselves in when we have people in far off countries making decisions that directly impact our environment, right? And when these big huge companies come in and they undercut the price for small family farmers can't compete. I just saw this video by RFK, and he was talking about North Carolina specifically. And he said, as Smithfield became so dominant in the pork production industry, I think it was 28,000 family farms were put out of business. Now, when family farms are put out of business, you're not eating from your region, right? You're not taking into consideration what's happening in your local ecosystem. So you have people polluting in your community, and you're not even really raising things in a way that's going to improve your community or have that food go to your community. So many issues with the factory farm model. And the reason that we went there is because we had all of these modern advancements, right? Refrigeration, new antibiotics and supplements, and we didn't really foresee, I think, these unintended consequences. But when we factor in all of these externalities, as they call it, it's not really cheap meat. It's actually unaffordable meat. And so what we did at Wild Pastures was say, okay, even 75% of the grass-fed beef in America is imported, right?
Mm.
So even of grass-fed farmers, most of them, that we were supporting when we're ordering grass-fed beef weren't even in America. And COVID-19 taught us we need food security, we need food sovereignty, we need our own family farms to kind of be resurrected so that we have a sustainable, local,
Mhm.
economical, environmentally friendly food supply. And so what we did was we partnered with farmers and ranchers who do something called regenerative agriculture. And regenerative agriculture is essentially using animals in a highly managed way, that kind of mimics predatory prey cycles, because
Mhm.
it's not that animals are bad for the environment like we've all been taught. They can be, right, in the factory farm model, absolutely, but they don't have to be. And we actually found Andrew Rasan and Alan Savory found out that you can use animals and heal desertified ecosystems and heal broken soil structure and things like that, because they fertilize. They also are like adding, they're kind of like breaking up the ground so
Yeah.
seeds can germinate. They're stimulating grass growth,
Yeah.
and grass that cows eat, it acts like a straw for carbon, and it can trap it underground. So animals can be one of the best tools that we have, but we have to use them in a regenerative or holistically managed system in order to do so. So we just partnered with American farmers who were doing that. And we're also actively helping farmers to transition. It's really scary, right? To get out of this model that we have now, where they might be being supported by subsidies and other things, and feel a little bit safer. So we were kind of helping them with money, and just helping them pay to transition to more regenerative based systems, and being able to validate the ecological improvements, because that's the difference between something like organic and something regenerative. Organic is a type of agriculture that's not always, it's not necessarily making things worse, but it isn't actively regenerating the ecosystem in every scenario. But regenerative agriculture says, okay, how is this plot of land now? and how do we improve on it
Mm,
measurably over time. And so
yeah.
it's measuring ecological outcomes. So
And
that's
that,
what we did with Wild Pastures. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I find really fascinating. Like organic is just not the same as regenerative farming. Like they're completely different. A lot of people would be like thinking, okay, so if this is organic, that means that the animals are free, and that means that the farm is doing everything ethically and everything's perfect, perfect, perfect. But it doesn't actually mean that. It's the term is regenerative farming. That's the important thing. Can I just kind of go over what you've just said and just going through my understanding of it? So the problem with farming these days is that they take animals and they basically have them in one place. So they overstimulate the soil, and they basically take away all of the nutrients, and then the soil basically becomes less effective, and it's just not as healthy basically, and that's the current problem. But um, are you saying that animals, they naturally in the wild, they naturally move from place to place because of predators, you said, and maybe because the soil gets bad, they can sense it and they move on, and so basically regenerative farming is kind of like mimicking that. So you're kind of moving the animals around. And the fact is, you do need those animals because the animals use their excrements and everything to kind of help the soil get healthy. So that's basically what it is, right? It's kind of moving them around to different patches, changing things up, and that's what keeps the soil healthy. That's therefore what keeps the animals healthy, because the soil reflects the animal, which then reflects on us. So it kind of starts from that, right?
Yeah. So do you know Alan Savory's story?
No, tell me.
Okay, I got to tell you this.
Go
So
on.
he was a ecologist in Africa, and they were trying to figure out how to heal this desertified ecosystem. And so he and other ecologists agreed they needed to kill 40,000 elephants, and they did. They killed 40,000 elephants. Now, I highly recommend anyone go watch his TED Talk. It has
I
millions of
will.
views.
What's
Alan
his name
Savory.
again? Yeah, Alan Savory. I've
Alan
read.
Savory. And so, but what he found out was the land didn't get better. It actually got worse. And so it sent him to thinking, okay, what do I do? And so he went and studied the work of Andrew Voisin, and he was a French, I don't know, I think he might have been an ecologist. But what he said, it's not the animals, the amount of animals on the land, it's the timing, right?
Mm,
When animals were roaming the prairie as they did and creating this incredibly fertile soil that we have today, they were moving because they were being chased,
hmm.
and also it's a natural, when you dung and urinate everywhere, you don't want to stay and eat
You want me
there,
there?
right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
natural, right? That the animals would then move on. So they fertilize and they move on and they find better soil, and they just keep moving. And so they decided, Alan Savory created this system based on his teachings where it's called holistic management. So you come to a plot of land, it's going to be different everywhere, right? The timing of this. But
Mm.
yes, you take animals and you move them, maybe daily, maybe every other day, maybe more than once a day. And you just kind of, you're paying attention to the land itself. That's the thing. You don't just, it's not like a click and play. You're becoming a friend to that ecosystem. You have to watch
Mm.
that ecosystem. But yes, it's that animal comes on the land that, it's cow patty, right? It's this amazing source of life, right? And nutrients. And then we have dung beetles that come in and then they take the nutrients down, and then then those nutrients become parts of plants, right? Those nutrients become part of creation of photosynthesis, and then they become part of animals. So yes, and those microbes, right? Those are stimulating the microbes underground, which are literally the basis for everything else that comes after. And yeah, like I said, that disturbance, right?
Mm.
Ground needs a little to be broken up. Seeds can then germinate, right? It can hold nutrients and water better. And then again, because it's constantly stimulating grass, it
Mm.
acts, it's improving the ability of that grass to take in carbon, because the roots slough off and it has an increased demand for the process of photosynthesis. But when cows stay in one spot and they overgraze, which we do a lot of times in our current ranching scenario, even when they're
Mm-hmm.
grass fed, they can stay in one plot,
Mm.
they can urinate too much, or they can, over fertilize, they can over disturb, and they can overgraze. And then it becomes a more detrimental thing. So yeah, one of the worst things we did was take out the animals from farms, try and create these vast monocultures, right? That don't have the animal inputs. And then we're using fertilizers, right? When we could just be using the animals, and we're creating, a less sustainable system. And the fertilizers, right, and pesticides that we have to use in place of animals are expensive, right? And there's, a lot of damage that can come from them as well,
Yeah.
particularly pesticides. So yeah, the animals, and even Alan Savory will tell you, especially in the desertified ecosystems, right? Like in Africa, those are the ecosystems that need animals the most. But if you talk to someone like Alan Williams, he's been using animals to restore ecosystems in, hundreds of different countries all over the world. And they always say, yes, you can make progress on a plot of land, using organic principles, right? Regenerative principles even, but you can always make it faster with animals.
Right. I'm reading this fabulous book. I wonder if you've heard of it. What Your Food Ate
Oh
by
yeah, Dr.
yeah.
Montgomery. Yes. Oh yeah. He's in my docuseries
I was
too.
gonna say, is he? I knew you were gonna
Oh
say that.
yes. Oh yes. He's amazing. I mean, and his other really fascinating book was The Hidden
He's
Half
done a
of Nature.
few. Yes,
Have you
yes.
read The
It's all
Hidden Half
about
of
soil, right? I haven't read it yet, but I'm literally on a roll with his stuff. Like,
Do that one next, because what he argues, and I love this, I think is such a beautiful hypothesis, is the microbes in the soil are kind of like the microbes in our gut, right? And
mm-hmm.
it's like the plant's digestive system. And when we take that away, or when we ruin that, interfere with that, which we do with fertilizers and pesticides, we kind of decimate, like it's just like what antibiotics do to our gut,
Yes,
right?
exactly,
So yeah,
exactly.
I
And
love that.
you know how antibiotics, when we take them, it leaves opportunity for like more aggressive bacteria to overgrow, and then we get bacterial overgrowths in our body, and then we get like thrush and candida and things. But it's the same in soil. So the soil also, if you take all of the good stuff out of the soil, which is what happens in farming today, it leaves the soil open to pathogenic bacteria, and that's when farmers need pesticides and they need to kind of treat it with all of these kind of treatments, because the soil is sick basically, and it's very similar to the human body. It's really
Yeah.
fascinating.
It's so fascinating. And I hear farmers telling me that they are most concerned with their underground livestock. That means like creating as many
Love that.
microbes as possible, because that is where the explosion of life takes place after that. So it's all
Yes.
about those microbes, just like we're learning in our gut,
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, regenerative agriculture is mining for microbes. And
yeah, it's incredible, the reflection of soil, this like this basically, I know David Montgomery's point of view is that the reason why we are sick, obviously processed foods and all that, like no one can argue with that, but the fact that even our healthy food like our animals and the plants, that they don't have the nutrients that we need. So that's why like companies like yourself, like Paleo Valley, for example, with the vitamin C, and like that's when they step in, because it's like, look guys, like we probably didn't need all this stuff before, but now these days, with the state of our land and the state of our food, we need them, because the soil isn't providing it.
yeah, and Dr. David Thompson did some research basically showing that the levels of our food, our nutrients in our food, are lower than at any time in
Mm,
history. I think there's like 50% drop in iron in one type of meat, and 50% drop in calcium in
mm,
certain plants. And most people say that's from the dilution effect, right? We're just taking out more than we are putting back and prioritizing
mm,
yield. But what Dr. Catherine Jones says is that it's because we've destroyed the microbial bridge.
mm,
Now, the way that plants acquire nutrients in the soil, which is where they're coming from, rock and soil, broken down geology, is these microbes. Now,
mm,
the plants pump almost half, 30 to 40% of the carbon that they acquire and the carbohydrates they make from photosynthesis down into their roots, and
mm.
the roots, so that they can feed the microbes. And in exchange, the microbes give them the nutrients. So again, when we are breaking and wiping out that microbial taxi system, even if the nutrients are in the soil, the plants aren't even able to access them. And so, yeah, finding wherever you can, whenever you can, farmers who are prioritizing the microbial life in their soil, it's really, really important effort
I was
for
going to say, like, just it's been if anyone listening to this will be like, what the frick do I do then? Like, come
yeah,
on.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so what's your best advice for someone? Like, what do we do? Where do we take it from here?
Yeah, okay. Lots of ways you could take it from here. So If you are in an area where Wild Pastures delivers, obviously, right? We are vetting these farmers and they are all in America. So do that. Other than that, go to your locals farmers markets, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Ask the hard questions. And sometimes you'll be surprised, right? Someone that doesn't even say they're organic or regenerative, if you talk to them like, hey, what are you doing? Are you using herbicides? Are you using pesticides? Are you using fertilizer? Are you actively rehabilitating your soil? Are there animals on your farm? Just get to know a little bit about their operations. Even in Boulder, a relatively large area, I've kind of gotten to know all the farmers just by going out and asking them the questions. And so, and also just, yeah, educating yourself, how do we build soil health, compost, animals, right? Least disturbance, or, just trying to always give back to the land, and having a garden if it's something that you have the time for. Growing your own food is always a way to do it too. But yeah, I never want this conversation to be overwhelming, because it can be, right? And we're all
Yes. Yes.
so busy, and we can access sometimes what we can access, and you can not feel bad about that. But I think getting intimately involved in your local food system is a great thing that anyone can absolutely do without it being overwhelming. One of our favorite days of the week is to go to the farmer's market with my son on Wednesday night and just get to know the people growing your food. And then beyond that, when you go to the store, yeah, I mean, look at the labels, right? You're going to find most of it's factory farms. You're not going to find a lot of regulation around the term regenerative yet, which kind of makes it tricky, but you can always call those people. You can always buy organic. Organic animals aren't going to be always roaming on the land. Sometimes they can be eating grains. It's not a perfect thing, but if it's what you can access, right? It's you still being aware and still making the best decision you can in that moment. But that's exactly why we created Wild Pastures, because it was just too hard for people to find and also too expensive. And so what we've done is we've kept our costs 40% lower than other meat delivery services, again, because we don't want it to be an elitist thing or something you can only opt into if you have the means. We want it to be an everyone can an opt-in thing. And so yeah, but just do one small thing, just one small nugget of new awareness, and I think you're on the right path.
I have to say, like, most of my listeners are based in the UK. So to all of the UK people,
Yeah.
there's lots of access to farmers markets over there. And like, I think that advice is good for everybody. So, oh my gosh, so we've covered so many interesting things. I feel like I could talk to you even more. So we'll have to do this again, basically. That's what I'm saying. But do you have
Love that.
any do you what's your, just to finish, what's your dream for the future?
Ooh. Oh,
Hmm.
my dream for the future is that everyone knows that food is medicine, right? And that you're actively improving your health and increasing your vitality, or you're not, right? And that we don't have to just age and have this 10-year period at the end of our lives where we are struggling and where we are suffering. Like, we can actually be active participants in creating health every single day. And my other dream is that people just become more involved in the way that their food is produced. I think we lost that connection, and I think we're still suffering because of it. I want to see a revival in local food systems, in sustainable food systems, and I hope that everyone kind of understands why that's really important, because it's not only about us, right? It's about our children, and I really want to create a future that they're all going to be grateful for, and that they can all go about and thrive because of. And so, yeah, my dream is that we just all recognize the power of food for our own health, for the health of our community, for the health of our planet, and then we even just like take one small step in that direction whenever we're able.
Yeah. I love that. God, Autumn Smith, that was such a great conversation. And I learned so much. And your brain is literally like full of studies and information and dates and names. It's like the names you're throwing out, you're like, this person, I'm just like, literally my hand hurts from just writing down these names. I'm just like, I can't keep up. Like, she keeps mentioning these names. I need to look them up. So you're just full of information. I can tell that you're so passionate about this. And that's why I support Paleo Valley, Wild Pastures, and then, obviously if I'm ever in town, then I'd love to come and visit your restaurant. And I love what you're doing. I just think everybody needs to, like you said, kind of take a leaf out of your book and, maybe take one step at a time and, really get connected with our food. So thank you so much. It was such a good conversation.
This has been a real pleasure. You're delightful. I mean, there's no other word for you, and I'm really appreciative that you've had me.
Lovely. Thank you so much.